Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Executives, and Eccentrics, a podcast dedicated to the stories, strategies, and secrets of remarkable individuals. Join us as we engage in enlightening conversations with intriguing entrepreneurs, accomplished executives, and fascinating eccentrics, exploring their journeys, triumphs, and the unconventional wisdom that has shaped their success. In this episode, we talk with David Steele, founder and CEO of One Wealth Advisors, and founder and executive chairman of Flower and Water Hospitality Group. We discuss why he builds businesses to last instead of planning an exit, and how that shapes his approach to leadership and growth. David also shares his perspective on retirement, purpose, and helping others succeed.
Hello, David. Tell me who you are and what you do.
I'm David Steele. I am founder and CEO of a financial planning company called One Wealth Advisors. We're a registered investment advisory firm managing about $1.3 billion in assets under management. And I am also founder and executive chairman of a restaurant company called Flower and Water Hospitality Group that has 7 restaurants and a consumer packaged goods business. And yeah, that's my professional background.
I mean, the multiple restaurants and it all smells a bit serial entrepreneur. Is it you simply dip your toe in? Obviously, it's several years, right? You dip your toe in, you figure out you like it, you start going deeper, you expand it, you scale it, and you go to the next thing. Or how do you work?
Well, I mean, the baked into that, the way you just phrased it is this a little bit of ADD in my mind, which is to say, start something and then sell it, or I'm done with it. Whereas for me, I'm much more interested in starting generational businesses. I don't have an interest in starting things that are built to sell. I have an interest in starting things that hopefully will be around 50 years after I'm dead.
That's definitely not. It's very atypical from the 100+ interviews I've done, and I've interviewed all over the scale in terms of success and wealth, all that kind of things. But typically, it is I grew it, I built it. I'm sitting on the board. I still own 5 or 10%, but I sold the rest of it to PE or whatever. It sounds like you're looking to be around for multiple generations, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, I'm motivated by being in the service of others rather than money. And I see myself in the service of the clients of my financial planning company. These are deep relationships, some of which are longer than 30-year relationships. Selling it, it's heartbreaking. My team members, I have a 13-person team in my financial planning company. Our turnover is darn near 0% since we started the company. That would be heartbreaking to not get to work with my team anymore. And the restaurant company, we started our first restaurant 16 years ago. I started with a 24-year-old chef who's now the CEO of that company 16 years later. To not get to work with him anymore would be heartbreaking, and my whole team over there. So for me, it's like I just want to, these are relationships that people I love deeply, and I want to get to keep working with them. And so the idea of selling to PE and being on the board, I mean, it's almost like having, for me, I don't have kids, but I can imagine it's like having a child and say, okay, I'm done with that child.
Yeah, it's definitely, but it's definitely a different kind of way to look at it. But I know, but it also sounds like you're truly in love with the business.
I
And I
am.
think that's maybe the difference is for most people, it's a vehicle. For you, it's a lifestyle. For you, it's an art.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. There's a guy named Rick Rubin who is the original producer of the Beastie Boys, and of course he became one of the great music producers of all time. And he wrote a book. I think it's The Artist's Way. I'm maybe messing up the name of the book. It was out a couple of years ago, and I read this book, and I felt complete validation for having seen my business life as a version of being an artist. Rick Rubin validated that in the book and basically said, we're all artists. We create, we produce. And yeah, I mean, my businesses for me are very much an artistic endeavor. I see it that way. So thank you for adding that word and opening that up for the dialogue.
Yeah, it's interesting. You have to truly be in love with what you do to feel that way, I think, right? It's I've definitely started businesses that was a means to an end, and then you go along, you kind of learn a little bit, and then you realize, oh, I found an area I truly love, I truly want to be in, and I truly can't imagine not being around. And then the idea of retirement's the dumbest thing I've ever heard my entire life. Why would I not want to continue to create? I'm assuming that's also a similar feeling for you.
Uh, I've been on a bunch of podcasts, and I have said over and over again this exact phrasing, which is, I wouldn't wish retirement on my worst enemy. Now, I'm uniquely positioned to have that opinion in that we've got 400 clients over 34 years at the financial planning company, and I have seen lots and lots of retirements. And I will tell you, way more of them go wrong than anybody would imagine, which is to say, people I have found can get pretty heavily depressed. My hypothesis is they lose their sense of purpose. And I believe that there's another non-binary way of thinking about retirement, because right now when we think about retirement, we think about I'm either working or I'm retiring, and you've reached a financial position maybe to whatever means it was, whether it be income replacement through your portfolio or a pension or whatever. Now you've replaced your income, which theoretically means you don't any longer have to work, but your sense of purpose is gone. And what I would like to submit is, in almost every career, there is a way to continue to work and do the things that you have mastery in, and delegate out the things that make you want to retire, and whatever that may be. And so if you're in a financial position to retire, ask yourself the question, well, why do I want to retire? What is it about my life every day, week, month, whatever, that makes me not want to do this in the overly simplified, intellectually lazy, binary outcome of retire versus work? And what's the in between? So again, you brought up something that's near and dear to my heart. So thank you.
I kind of love that. So I guess your thesis is, don't retire, simply go hire out what you hate in the business. And it's funny. I think I had that realization. So I read, there's a book called Built to Sell, right? It's a billion-year-old company book about building something and then selling it off, right? But in the book, there's this kind of this like, there he almost describes about, oh, well, you hate accounting, we'll get an accountant, obviously. Oh, you hate doing, I don't know, managing people, we'll get a manager. And that part I agree with, but the actual end result, you're saying, just keep going and just get rid of the stuff you absolutely despise, and everything else you should love everything else, supposedly, right?
Well, what I would say is the act of delegating is a magical act. I would say another way, another word that is very appropriate to use when you say delegating, you would say mentoring, coaching, teaching, training, right? And so this apprenticeship is another word we could use. And when you're delegating out to somebody, you're empowering them with skills that eventually for them could turn into mastery. And you're freeing yourself to just apply the mastery you have while removing the minutia. So it actually allows you to be elevated in a way that maybe if you didn't delegate, you couldn't be. Listen, if you're a professional athlete, you're not going to still be a professional athlete when you're 75 years old, but a lot of the listeners are involved somehow in things that require their head and their heart and not just their brawn. And so obviously if it's something that requires you to be physical, it's a little more challenging to completely execute what I'm talking about. But I mean, even if you're a plumber, let's face it, there's probably, if you're in a strong financial position, nothing stopping you from getting somebody to do the majority of the physical work as a plumber, and allowing you to just be more of a design-based plumber, right? Thinking about the architecture of the plumbing, literally. So anyway, I digress.
No, I love that. So yeah, because I mean, if you're 70, even if you love plumbing, the last thing you need to be is under a sink at 60, right? But I think you can still get the same joy, if not even more, of maybe bringing up the next generation or two or three or four, right? Because you got into it, maybe you loved it to begin with. Back to the sports analogy, you love football, you can no longer play it, but you can still vicariously live through that joy by showing someone else. And I feel like that's kind of where you've been for maybe 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, you could be a coach in football. I mean, there is a 99% probability that with some creativity, thought, and patience, but fortitude, you can figure out a way to love what you do until the day you die.
So this summer we were in Kenya. We were in the middle of the Rift Valley, which is 400 or 500 miles in every direction of death. There's lions, there's hyenas. It's very, very dangerous. And I also had a Starlink, and I was able to, at a distance for weeks and weeks and weeks, be in that mindset of joy, being around the animals and in the Maasai tribes people and such, and still run the damn business. And still, I still had that little injection of awesomeness, like, oh, we got that contract, or oh, this person I had trained to do that is doing this, that, or the other. So I think maybe I experienced that, maybe what you're kind of alluding to for the first time this summer, in that you've built something that's kind of, it's almost like you've raised a human, and the human's now walking and talking, doing all the things.
Yeah, and furthering the analogy with I mean, let's play this out. You have a kid, you parent the child, you nurture the child goes to college. Hopefully, the relationship was functional and loving, and the child still wants to have you advise them and mentor them and guide them when they're in college. Okay, now they get out of college, and they hopefully still want you to coach them on their career and even life decision making, and maybe, just maybe, they join your business as a team member, and who knows, maybe eventually, not in a nepotistic way, but in a more positive way, they move up through the company. I mean, that sounds pretty awesome. I don't have kids again, but that sounds pretty amazing if I did. Well, why can't you think of your business or your profession sort of in the same way, in your job? And I see it as the same thing. So, when we began, before you hit play on the podcast, we were talking about, well, what, is it, you want me to focus on the restaurants or the financial planning business? And they're two kids. I love them both. I want you to focus on both.
I think there's this for the last, especially since the last 15 years, there's been this commoditization of joy, right? You've commoditized this thing you've built, not you specifically, but we've built. And then somehow we've been told that this piece of art that we've made, we're supposed to go commoditize and sell it off to PE or go do whatever, retire or whatever. And it felt gross then, and it kind of feels gross now.
Yeah, there was a movie a long time ago with Tom Cruise called The Firm. What stuck with it was it was a fine movie. It was a John Grisham book, and it was a fine movie. But what stuck with me was this manipulative assimilation of bringing this young lawyer into eventual partner track in this really disturbing, almost horror-like company. It began with habituating him to a certain lifestyle, getting into a home that cost X, and the cars, and more and more and more of it. And all of a sudden now he's running on this treadmill, and this treadmill is speeding up. It's not slowing down. And I really do think our culture, celebrates these types of sell your business outcomes sort of in the same way. And so it's without thought that it's assumed that, well, of course you're going to sell something you've built so you are rich. And then, of course, you'll just do it again to try to get richer. And there's a real sadness to that for me. That, listen, nobody's going to cry over my net worth. I've done fine, thank you very much. But the truth is, if I would have started things and sold them, my net worth would probably be a lot bigger than it is. But I am really confident that I wouldn't wake up every day as energized and proud of still being part of the things that I've been involved creating.
So the average American male is dead by 73-ish, right? And we retire by 65. Ish-esque is what we've been told our entire lives. At least I know I had since I was a child. So I get to do what I want for 8 years. Awesome.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. It feels like, I don't know, it feels really gross.
Yeah, I mean, I run two companies that I started with partners, by the way. I have to give credit to my partners that I started these businesses with. But I probably work 25, maybe 30 hours a week. There's 144 hours in a week. So if I'm working 30 hours a week, that leaves me with a lot of hours for doing things that are really awesome, like, I don't know, being in Africa, like you just said, or snowboarding and mountain biking, which I do pretty religiously. And so it's, you are your calendar. And so go look at your calendar. And again, if you're working 50 hours a week and you're making 30% more money than you do need to make to survive, well, how about you go hire somebody or people to go do the things you hate doing so you could work 30 hours a week? Maybe you'll make less money. Maybe, just maybe, it will free you up to do higher level things to actually make more money, which, wait for it, is what we call scaling, right? Delegate, elevate, scale. So anyway, we're beating a dead horse on this concept now, but I really don't want anybody listening. I want to leave anybody listening with this idea of, like, rethink what retirement looks like.
What's your philosophy? Because there's almost this kind of guiding force, right? From the age of 16 all the way till now, right? And it's almost like philosophy changes along the way. What has been the main philosophy change for you? I mean, I'm just going to make the assumption it feels like that time, that the less time you have, the more you kind of value it. And I mean, like, to live, right? So the older you get, the more the more that you kind of, I don't know, hold on to the time. How has your philosophy changed since the first dollar you earned in your business to now?
Well, I mean, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is something we can all look at for understanding our motivation. I grew up in a pretty poor household, and I wasn't thinking about, self-actualization. When I got out of college, I was thinking about not ever worrying about being fed and warm and dry, right? And so as I made that first dollar and as I gained confidence in my base needs being met probably for the rest of my life and people I loved, making sure I could help them, etc., everything, my philosophy turned completely towards making sure everything I'm doing is in the service of others. So for me, that means working with our clients at the financial planning company. It means nurturing our customers at the restaurants. It means working with the partners in my businesses and the executive teams to help them live the lives they want to live. I believe that I can play an active role in helping them articulate what their goals are personally and professionally, quantifying those goals, developing plans to achieve those goals. So I bring this financial planning approach, which is a pretty, kind of boring, clear, concise step 1, 2, 3, 4 approach to how I run my work with my partners in my companies. So that the flip is, I'm not worried about food and shelter anymore,
Right.
and I'm worried about people.
Yeah, it's amazing how that philosophy changes when you're not going to starve to death if you don't work for a year or 2 or 5 or 12 or 20 or 5, right? It all that philosophy goes out the door when you realize that you could just stop tomorrow and things will be just okay. And the vast majority of the planet can't do that, right? So the philosophy kind of moves along with us and hopefully kind of grows up with us. How would you have, like, what exactly, if anything, if you could go back to young David and tell him something, right? What would you whisper in his ear that could change things better or worse, or did it work out the way it should have worked out for you?
Well, I didn't realize the power of, I call it often human magic, which is goal setting. And I think, we talked about retirement as a goal that I would like to deconstruct and have people reconsider. But truthfully, I think a lot of people's goals are not thought through as to whether they're authentically their own goals and whether they're good goals. I've heard people say, I want to be a billionaire. I find that to me one of the most ridiculous goals I've ever heard. If somebody says, I have the power of generating, of creating wealth in the name of eventually being able to help as many people through nonprofit endeavors or whatever, that feels like maybe a better goal, right? But this idea of wanting to be a billionaire, that's a really weird goal to me. I don't know. You may say I have a goal of having a plane because then I could bring my family, my own plane, because then I can move more efficiently and easily. Okay, I actually see that as a relative. I mean, I don't want one, but I could see that as a goal somebody could have. So I wish when I was in my teens and 20s, I realized how powerful goal setting was.
Yeah, it's very, I feel like this, when I hear someone who, when you hear that thing, right? I want to be a billionaire. It's almost vulgar, right? Because
Yeah, I
it's,
mean,
yeah.
but but yes, and I know where you're coming from with that. But what I'm interested is a little bit more analytical, which is why. What is being a billionaire going to do for you? Because the goal, it's not actually a goal. That's just ego, right? That's just, so you may say I want to be at the top of the social strata, right? Okay, well that's interesting. That probably is work you could do with a psychologist to figure out why you want that. But that's actually a goal. But what is it about being a billionaire that you would like to be able to do if you were a billionaire? The goals are in there. So I'm more interested in the analytics of it.
You know, it's interesting. So when I started this podcast, I had slowly started hiring out a lot of my responsibilities as leaders of my companies, right? And then what I ended up doing is I ended up talking to just people such as yourself, you know, almost over 100 at this point in the last year. And now I realize I'm a fan of business models. I'm really just a fan of hearing how the hell they did it. What drove them to get there? What was the secret that no one else knew that they understood, right? That allowed them to exploit that inefficiency to kind of go make it. And I figured out this is actually my goal, is to learn and be around this for the rest of my life, right? You know, and I wish but I didn't know it until I got here. And just there's no matter how much we tell people or how much we, you know, philosophize on whatever, you won't really know until you go down the road. I couldn't tell my 18-year-old self anything because it would be no value. It'd have zero value until you've actually gotten your ass kicked a little bit, right? Until you've actually had to go build something from scratch, and on and on and on, you know? So I don't know where I'm really going with that, other than, you know, I kind of understand what you're saying a little bit, right? You just don't know until you know, I guess. Right? You don't really
Well, I
understand until
mean,
you get there.
I wish, like I said, I wish that I didn't have much mentorship when I was younger. My mom was working her ass off as a school teacher, just doing her best to survive, raising two kids. So I really didn't have a ton of guidance, mentorship. I wish I had, because I think if I had, whoever I was working with would have helped me articulate what I wanted out of life. You know, yes, I mean, you tell me you were sort of fumbling around when you were younger, and you know, I'm guessing that had you had maybe more concise, consistent mentorship, you would have fumbled a little bit less.
See, here's the place why I disagree. I believe that if you have too much mentorship, the hopes and dreams that have are actually someone else's. And you've actually discovered your own hopes and dreams because you didn't have someone get mentoring you along the way. And I think that's a pure form of what you're supposed to be doing going forward anyway, right? You know, you were saying that setting goals, whose goals? Right? Is it my dad's goals? Is it what I heard, what I thought was goals of being a billionaire or whatever we thought when we were kids?
You make a great point. I would contend that I could clarify it in saying a good mentor. Because I think you're right. I do think, but you know, you see it all the times with, you know, a cliche of the angry father at the kid's sporting event who just screams and yells and acts completely irrationally. He is obviously projecting his own bullshit into that kid, and 1 out of 1 million, the kid ends up being a professional tennis player on the tour. But most of them end up having a lot of trauma they got to deal with a psychologist. But let's face it, good mentorship really is trying to pull out the individual's own magic, not project on their.
But that's also management. That's also correct management, right? You're putting the right person in the right place and giving them the right tools to go excel, right? And I think that's I think it's all the same philosophy.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right.
So what's in the future when you say help, when you want to help people? I mean, what does that mean exactly? You have philanthropical ambitions, or is there some future that you want to kind of shape, or where are you going?
Well, I don't. I've achieved most of the goals I had set for myself personally and professionally. There is my restaurant company. All of my I'm co-founder, and all of my stock is being in my estate plan is being left to a nonprofit organization that the restaurant company started to try to. A lot of restaurant workers are immigrants, and they work their ass off, and I would contend that the restaurant industry is built on the backs of immigrants. And what I want to do is I want to somehow use that nonprofit organization to fund immigrant restaurants, immigrant-owned restaurants, and give them private equity style coaching and curriculum, because a lot of immigrants, they when they open restaurants, they are able to get restaurants open, but really they've bought themselves a job. As a cliche, you see the family working their asses off and they're making a living and it's fine, but they don't really have access to capital and maybe the same type of confidence in following a more of a traditional business like curriculum to build a bigger company. It's just a restaurant. And so I have this dream of helping immigrants start multi-restaurant companies that have access to legitimate capital and a curriculum. So
Have you ever heard of a guy named John Rife?
no.
Yeah, that's literally what he does here in Florida. Is he? Yeah, he's got. You ever? There's a place called the Timeout Market in Portugal, in Lisbon. It's this large open market where you have stalls and you basically rent out the actual little mini kitchens. And he's kind of taken that very similar thing, only once you do well in his I guess his market, he'll go get that first restaurant for you, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth, and on and on and on. I think I'm going to introduce you to.
Yeah, there's an
Yeah.
organization I've supported over the years in San Francisco called La Cocina, and I actually met with the executive director the other day because I had this vision that I'm like, listen, La Cocina is great, but you give $50,000 grants to these immigrant families, and guess what they're going to do? They're buying themselves a job, and they're going to end up, making $60,000-$70,000 a year, having their family work for minimum wage. And it's lovely that they're of their own businesses, but these aren't things that are building franchise value for themselves. And so I was like, well, can we partner with La Cocina and have people graduate from La Cocina to go into this thing I'm trying to create? And so I'm just beginning to try to figure this out. So I would love an
And
introduction.
that sounds like fun, though, right? Because you're literally you're kind of
Totally.
solving these meta problems, right? These like problems of problems, and one of those biggest ones is like, oh, great, I work for the family restaurant, but you're also living dad's dream, right? Not your own at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And then, but the idea or the ability to scale and to franchise and like that is a whole nother, that's a different skill set altogether that you would never get on your own.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these people are intimidated to ask for help. They just don't know where to turn to get help. But if they're not intimidated by it, they're not confident necessarily and comfortable with having access to serious capital, the type of capital necessary to open real generational type businesses.
So, being in the restaurant industry business yourself, I mean, do you have a love for cooking?
I do, but there's a big difference
There is.
between being a cook and a chef. First of all, there's a difference between being a cook at a restaurant or a chef. A cook is really running an assembly line, right? A chef is managing people and creating culture and maybe instilling some creativity onto the team. And a home cook is a very different skill than both of those things. So I'm a pretty darn good home cook and I do like cooking, but I'm not a chef.
Yeah, but I mean, I mean, if you were, I mean, I don't know, owned a race car, you'd have to know a little bit about how race cars work as an example, or have a
Sure.
little bit of a passion for
Yes.
it.
I
Yeah,
know more. I probably know more about cooking than maybe you do. Maybe.
I
But
don't think you do. I don't think
I,
I'm dead serious. I bet I cook maybe 3 hours a day. I'm dead serious. I mean,
wow.
I make pasta from scratch 4 days a week. I
That's
cook
right
bread
on.
from scratch at least 2 or 3 days, milled from grain that I bought. Okay, like I'm a completely obsessed, which is part of the reasons that I was kind of like when I stumbled upon you. I think I may have found you in the Wall Street Journal or somewhere, Then I started drilling into it. I'm like, huh. He's like this modern day Renaissance person who's like both a bunch of different types of things, and here we are. David, we're out of time, man, but you're awesome. You're very interesting, and I'm really glad there's people like you in the world.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and hopefully plant some seeds with the listeners.
Thank you.